Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are here for a nice and early happy hour because let's face it, it's always 5 o'clock someplace. We're going to get a little bit of an early start here, 4:30 on in the East Coast. But I am thrilled to have back two more guests from my Speaking to Influence podcast, Erica Bennett from Independence Blue Cross and Eric Griffin from Mobile Outfitters. Now, each one of them have come from very, very different industries, have very different roles. But I brought the two of them together today because I really loved a particular theme that both of them talked about in very unique applications, let's put it that way. And we're going to hit the topic of pivot. But before we get into that, because pivot, I think, has really become almost a label that overall generalizes this year, like 2020. It's like, forget evolution. Evolution is out the window. It's like surprise, boom, 90 degrees in a totally unexpected direction. So how we're all finding our feet as we're learning to figure out what direction we need to go with this. But let me start by allowing each of you to, number one, by welcoming you here, and then allowing each of you to tell our audience about who you are and what you do. So let's see, Erica, you want to kick us off because you were more recent. You were our guest officially, or we launched your episode last week. So tell us about you and Independence.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here again with you. And Eric, it's very nice to meet you. As I say here, I work for Independence Blue Cross. We are a very large health insurance organization, a pillar in the Philadelphia community. And I have the privilege of working within our human resources area for our corporate university. And specifically, I work within our leadership development institute. And I have responsibility along with a team of amazing people to provide development opportunities, for all of our leaders. And that can be anything from executive coaching to team building, you name it, we do it. We're a small team, but we are a mighty team. And I'm super proud to be a part of the organization. So that's a bit about me.
That's great. And let's see, as Eric is going to give us his intro in a second, I'm going to just ask, and this is the beauty of just having this be a live and casual conversation. Do you happen to have a separate mic or maybe a pair of earbuds? Because it's a little bit hard to hear you, actually.
It is. Okay, I'll go get them right now.
That would be great. Thanks. Okay. Griff, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. It's good to meet Eric as well. My name is Eric Griffin, and my company's Mobile Outfitters. We invent and manufacture cell phone accessories. We make them here in Philadelphia for the most part, and we sell them through a network of independently owned franchise stores. We have about 800 stores in 50 countries.
Now, you in particular had the most literal pivot as far as at least the content and of your product in that. And I was so surprised as we were talking in the middle of the interview that I actually had you back the next day for sort of a part two or the next week. As you mentioned, Mobile Outfitters, as the name would make obvious, creating manufacturing cell phone accessories, but something changed. That's not all that you ended up producing, or even what primarily you ended up producing, at least for a while. What happened and where are we now?
Yeah, so pandemic hit. We're brick and mortar retail and shopping malls, so we got hit about as hard as the restaurants or any other in-person service industry. Coincidentally, last year we cut all of our online sales. We do not sell online in order to lean into what we're really good at, which is brick and mortar assisted sale. So we were caught at zero. And so that forced us to pivot. We pivoted to personal protection equipment, PPE, predominantly face shields, which we make here in Philadelphia, and face masks, which one of our vendors in China pivoted to themselves. And so it made sort of supply chain side easy. As far as today, so we sold just over 3 million masks. We sold over 20,000 face shields. We got some government bids that we won both in Philly and in Florida, down in Florida, where they had a lot of issues everyone's aware of. So we continue that business. We have a website dedicated to it. We sell every day on that site, but it's by no means a focus. It's something that's helping bolster up the business. We're at about 30% down from last year in our core business. So that effort really helps support and cover a little bit of that gap.
Okay, so the mobile accessory market has come back up for you now. You figured out a way to reground for that one now.
Yep. Yeah, we ramped back up. We seem to be at our new normal revenue, and now we've just got to rebuild from there.
And it's back into the brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar, yeah, same sales channel.
Okay.
Sort of what we were doing in February, we're doing now that's back to about 70%.
Wow, that's great. So it was actually a pretty, I mean, in the big picture, economically speaking, 6 to 8 months or so for things to come back about 3/4.
Yeah, which I consider, like you said, it's slow because when you're in the middle of it, but if you zoom out, it's actually pretty quick. And I'm very grateful for all the hard work that everyone did to make that possible.
And that's got to be an amazing teamwork effort at that point to get everybody's buy-in, to get everybody to do an awful lot of learning, because while some of your efforts are what's the right word, transferable skills, as it were, there's probably an awful lot about we're going to make what and I'm going to do what, as you know, this is not the company I signed up for. So, the buy-in that you needed to be able to get as a leader, I would think would be pretty fast and furious, and you're going to identify really quickly who does and doesn't belong on this team. Is that, am I guessing too much, or is that pretty accurate?
No, it's definitely accurate. For us, culture is sort of where we start. Culture is the number one thing for us, and part of our culture is adaptability. And we're a small company. We're 30 people. We did about 14 million in revenue. You have to adapt. I mean, pivoting is just another day in the life of a small company. It's not like a big event. This was a big event.
So this is a big event. Let's not. There's pivots and then there's massive pivots. Yeah, I don't want to. Humility is lovely, but there's a reality check about the massive shift that you did that I think you deserve credit for. So I don't want to let that slide. But yes, it is certainly on a day-to-day basis a constant adjustment in a smaller business. So go on. You were saying.
Yeah, we pivot all the time. I mean, this business we're in today was a pivot from a previous business. So we have a history of pivots to stay relevant and to continue to grow, because as you grow, everything breaks over and over again, and you're reinventing yourself, no matter what your size is. And this is just another example of how we had to do that to survive. And, the businesses that do that survive, and the ones that don't, unfortunately, don't make it.
Right. Right. And how about you, Erica? Do you recall when we had talked originally about the pivots, you had mentioned to me that there was now more than ever an effort to help leaders learn to lead inclusively, right? To how to address people's feelings about all the stuff that's going on, which is now so much more emotionally charged than perhaps it was, or more people are aware of how emotionally charged it is perhaps than previously. But finding that balance between how do I acknowledge the humanity? How do I acknowledge the frustrations, the stresses, the emotions that are charging all this, but still say, but we still got to be productive here, and we still got to kind of get work done. There's only so much emoting that is that there's space for in the workplace, and without sounding callous. How do we? So tell me about this pivot that's happened in the last 6 months or so.
Wow. First of all, I can't believe it's been 6 months. It feels more like it's been a year. But I think that there isn't a leader on the face of the earth who didn't quite find themselves faced with the reality of what was happening, the fact that you may have a team and some pretty major responsibilities that you still have to pull through on. But I think what made it such an interesting time, and I think leaders are still dealing with it, is that you're dealing with your own feelings and emotions, your own anxiety, your own stress, your own response to the changes, both the social unrest, possibly having people in your family that are, not feeling well, or that have been impacted in certain ways. And so it's sort of like playing this dual role. I know myself to be a certain type of professional. It's a pretty linear thing. I've got these roles that I play. And then literally overnight, leaders now have to lead virtually. They have to navigate what's happening at home with their children. And yet they still have to get results while still trying to say, I've got to create space to have pretty difficult conversations, support people as they're going through some pretty frightful things that no one can control, and yet trying to navigate the feelings and experiences of their team, and yet navigating their own, journey through the fear, the stress, and the anxiety. And so pivoting, I think, has just become the norm. It's no longer a linear process anymore. Everybody is doing things in ways that they probably never dreamed that they would ever have to do. Having conversations on Zoom, trying to figure out how to stay connected and build those relationships. It isn't easy, but I do think that people are, at least the leaders in our company, they are showing up just brilliantly, right? They are embracing the technology, having the difficult conversation, showing up, and it's been a beautiful thing to see. So it's a day-to-day process, and I think this will continue. I think initially, kind of phase one was, this may last for a month, or this may last for 2 months. And, I'll sort of navigate this virtual work environment for a couple of weeks. But I feel like we're really moving into less of a, let's get back to normal, but more into phase two, which for me is more of a, this is the new reality. And what does that now mean for us as leaders moving forward? What do I need to really dial up and become more of? Because this is it. So it's been a challenge, but I've been very proud of the leaders I work with, especially our senior leadership, and how they've led the company in just a really, really amazing way, modeling a lot of transparency, a lot of communication, a lot of information sharing. And I think that's gone a long way towards helping to alleviate a lot of stress and anxiety that I'm sure anybody, anywhere, in any company may be feeling as they continue to navigate during these times. So, yeah.
So many people, especially with kids now, and that was the theme. I actually just interviewed somebody this morning, and that will go live next week, about the whole challenge of the work-life integration and how to, now that once again, school just kicked in. And of course, depending on where you live, some schools kicked in a few weeks ago, but now I think as of this week, everybody is 100% matriculated in some sort of children that is are all back in class. And whether, especially if you've got 2 or 3 or more kids, some may be fully virtual, some may be hybrid, some may be all in school, and trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how do I help the kids with whatever it is? And if I need to be there and making sure that the kid is sitting at the computer and following and able to do what they need to do. But I got to do my own work too. And I got to now go and pick the other one up at the bus stop. And I got to do whatever else. And my clients are setting up meetings, and they don't. And this was not supposed to be it, but the superintendent just changed their mind last week. So surprise, everybody, play 52, pick up with your schedules now and just rearrange everything. So the stress of the unknown of, okay, this is the new reality for the next 20 minutes. And then we'll see what happens. How have you found in your organizations that constant uncertainty, that not ability to control? Look, we never have total control over our own schedules, but there was the normal degree of lack of control. And then there is the now, which is tomorrow, everything could change. And all we know is that that's possible, but we don't know how or in what way. How has that influenced the way that you lead your organizations?
Eric, I'll let you maybe start.
Sure. So for us, and something you said, Erica, that was critical and I think really helped our staff was just constant communication and full transparency, even if that meant saying, I don't know.
Right.
Because I think what drives people crazy is if you don't say anything, they make something up in their head because they have to. And that's never going to be the right thing or the thing that you want them to make up because they're going on a limited set of information. And so we really implemented more transparency than we had ever done before. We went open book with our company. We share revenue, gross profit, net profit. During the transition, we kind of taught them how to understand that. We started presenting it regularly. And there were times we said, look, we're furloughing. We don't know how long it's going to be for. We don't know if we're going to be able to bring everyone back. We're going to do everything we can to do that. That's our goal. It's our number one priority, but we're not sure. And, sometimes telling people you're uncertain is better than letting them guess if it's times of uncertainty. And that approach, both with our customers and our employees and our vendors, actually went a really long way. And everyone just being in it together to try and figure out a way through it, because everybody wins if you do get through it.
Absolutely. I think that I love what you said, just this idea of almost like radical transparency. I think in the normal course of the world, you have your town halls, you have your, your meetings and so on. And I think leaders really do endeavor to keep people informed. But I think that given sort of the pandemic and kind of the really kind of personal impacts, as well as, and I'm going to just say it, the fear that we are all living with, which for me has been, just watching myself included, I'll be very transparent, a lot of anxiety, heightened stress, really trying to work and stay productive, but sort of also navigating some pretty complex feelings. one of the things that I have been super proud of within our organization, and I strongly recommend this to any leader that's listening if you haven't done this, but it's so important, given the challenges that we're facing, that people have an opportunity to not only hear from leaders, but to also come together collectively in a safe space to process what they're feeling. Kind of difficult to do, for instance, if you've got 500 people on a Teams call, but it is possible. So some of the things that we do, we've been holding on a very regular basis listening sessions, right? Where people can come together, they hear from not only our leaders, but they hear from associates in our organization that are sharing their experiences, for instance, as people of color, around the impacts of what's going on out here in the world. And then we also hear from our leaders as they are talking about how are they redefining their commitment to, eradicating social justice. I had the pleasure just yesterday, God, it's Tuesday, right? I had the pleasure yesterday of moderating a panel with our CEO, our Chief Human Resources executive, as well as one of our VPs, two of our VPs actually, and then one of our associates who came together to talk about their journey towards allyship. And when I tell you their stories, what they shared, coming together, being vulnerable, opening up, it was it was truly a very, very moving experience. But again, it's an opportunity for people to say, I want to share what I'm feeling. We use a lot of pull everywhere, word clouds and interactive opportunities via chat, because we can't open the lines for 300 people, but we work really hard to say, we're coming together. We are in this together. Collectively, we are one family. And again, just being able to create any experience where people have an opportunity to process some of these more difficult feelings and emotions, it speaks volumes about the commitment of organizational leaders to not only what's happening externally, but to also send a clear message. I care about you. I'm here for you. We literally are in this together. And so it's been transformational in many ways to see that. So.
Can you go a little bit deeper, if you can? Just give us a simple definition. When you say allyship,
Sure.
there's so many. What's the right word? So vernacular and terminology, jargon, all that kind of stuff evolves as discussions evolve over time. And we realize, well, this word's not really as accurate, and this one's less appropriate, and this one has connotations. So when you talk about allyship, my sense is that has a very specific intention behind it. What does allyship mean? What did it replace, and why?
Absolutely. So it's interesting. That was the topic of the panel yesterday, and we have a wonderful internal, one of our resource groups, our associate resource groups, and actually it was newly launched, and they have been doing incredible work in this space, but they're called iLead. And again, the purpose of this particular session was to bring people together to explore this concept. And so when we talk about allyship, we are simply saying that allyship, or behaving like an ally, these are activities or actions that you engage in that absolutely allows you or inspires you to speak up to and against any sort of racist act or any act that is discriminatory against marginalized people. So it's one thing to say, I see someone engaging in horrific behavior and I sort of walk away, or I just sort of stand back. It's another thing to say, and this is what an ally would do. Yes, I can see that perhaps there is a racist situation or a statement or something that someone said. But if I ignore it, I can also say, well, I would never engage in that behavior. Therefore, I am not a racist. Okay. So there's one sort of school of thought that says, well, I'm not a racist. And that simply means that you are sort of observing and experiencing yourself in a cognitive way almost. And you're separating yourself from a problem over here, right?
Because you're not the perpetuator.
Because you're not the perpetuator, right? So I didn't live during Jim Crow South and my family didn't, and so on and so forth. I'm not a racist. Now, that may be true in the sense that you aren't engaging in horrifically outward, very, clearly what are racist activities. And I think most people can actually say that and be honest and say that's true. You're not engaging in racist behaviors. The problem with that and why allyship becomes so important is because we say, okay, if I'm not a racist, then what am I? And so what we talk about is being anti-racist, right? So if I am anti-racist, I am now engaging in very action oriented. I am engaging in action. I am saying, you know what? I see that it is wrong. I don't support it, and I don't think this should happen. So I am speaking up. I am speaking up. I am in a very visible, action oriented way, supporting people, showing my support, being curious, asking questions. And so allyship is really a conscious way of adopting more of an anti-racist point of view to say, I am going to take action. I'm going to be a partner. Dan Hilferty, our CEO, said something I'm moderating the panel and I'm trying not to cry, but he said, and it was such a powerful visual. He said, we are all in this locked arm in arm. Like literally, when you think about an ally, you think about all of those women, I forget in which state several months ago during one of the social protests, but this arm of white mothers that were locked to protect police from coming in and interacting with some of the protesters, right? So they weren't just simply saying, I support what's happening out here in terms of the protests. They got up and physically decided to demonstrate allyship by showing up, right? So allyship is really a conscious, it's a conscious decision to take a stand, to say something, to see something, to say something, and to do something if you can. Allyship does not mean you necessarily have to go and walk in a march or in a protest. It could mean, as someone said on a call yesterday, I've decided as a white woman to take my children to an African-American doctor, or I've decided to explore different restaurants or businesses in my community. And that's really important. And I always say, on your journey to allyship, there's no judgment, because we are all doing the best we can every day, right? But I mean, we're doing the best we can. But sometimes when you're living in the scope of your world, you find yourself maybe drawn to things that are like you, people that people in your community. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when we are consciously trying to embrace and be curious about the experiences of the broader world around us, especially when it results in, building awareness and possibly changing the conditions for those that are marginalized, then it really takes on more of a sense of urgency, and you start to really feel that you are starting to move the needle on what has been a very long conversation. So it was quite the honor yesterday to be a part of that. But that conversation and conversations like that, our leaders are just leaning in, and it's just been a delight to watch it and to see the growth that everybody, black, white, blue, green, it doesn't matter. We are all of us collectively growing. Eric, I'm sure that's the case at your company too. I think it's impossible for us not to experience some impacts and to sort of feel ourselves growing as a result of these times. So
I think some of the, Eric, if I'm understanding part of it, a very small but really important distinction is that there is the passivity that we often take when we're saying, we may say something or sense something is not appropriate, but to say, you know what, it's none of my business. I wasn't part of that conversation. I don't want to stick my nose in. I don't want to make trouble for anybody. Let me just leave it alone. That sort of complicitness to allowing it, that you may not appreciate what happened, but by not defending or not even sort of perhaps taking that other person aside later on and saying, just letting you know that you may want to have a second conversation with that person because what you said was probably taken the wrong way, or perhaps you didn't mean it this way, but and just letting them, if not intervening right then in the moment, more in public or something, but to let it go and say, well, it wasn't mine. It's not my deal. It's none of my business. That blind eye is what kind of passively allows things to perpetuate. And while you may not feel like that's racist, it's not anti-racist. And I think that's the distinction. Can you take that one step to say, I'm going to do something. Maybe I'll drop them an email. Maybe I'll whatever, gently or not so gently, depending on what the situation is, but just not allowing passivity to be its own form of kind of aiding and abetting unintentionally, so to speak.
Laura, there's a lot of anxiety and fear that comes, I think, when anybody has you notice something, you feel that you want to say something, there is some fear around that. And I think that, and I call it purposefully, I use the word journey to allyship because it's a process, right? Everybody has a way of moving in the world. We all are a product of our lived experiences, and that's just what it is. And I say to people often, you have good intentions, but we don't always realize the impact of our intentions. And so as we start to open up, as we start to learn, as we start to see and hear more about those experiences of marginalized folks, then, as we become more aware, as we start to listen and grow along our journey, then allyship becomes something that starts to feel that it's actually more within your reach. I think the challenge is to work with people and not to make them feel attacked, not to make them feel shame. No one ever said, I'm going to change and do something that's wonderful by you attacking me and making me feel horrible about it. So,
Right.
even like the language we use, the support, the empathy, the emotional intelligence, admitting that you may not know what to say, but your intentions are good. I think all of those are ways that we just acknowledge we are human beings. We want to support. I may not get it right, but I definitely want to do something, but it is a process. So I just encourage people to be compassionate, and to be compassionate with themselves and to seek help, get support around this journey, because it isn't easy. It just isn't.
Eric, in your context with this slightly smaller company and different team, completely obviously, are there some challenging conversations that have needed to be, aside from the revenue and where the business is going when COVID hit, et cetera? Are there other kinds of conversations that have everybody's been working through trying to figure out how to have?
I think the hardest part for our people, because of that massive pivot in the middle, so we furloughed and then we pivoted. So if you're on the other side of that, as the leader and kind of the one making a lot of those decisions,
Sure.
I know where I'm going. And maybe I don't know where I'm going to end up, but at least I know where I'm going and why and how I'm going to do it. But for people that were furloughed and literally not allowed to work, hearing about a pivot we did a weekly communication where we said everything that happened. That's a pretty confusing time. And, so we had to work through that with people. Some people didn't agree with it. Some people didn't understand it. Some people just wanted to help, but didn't understand why they couldn't, because if you're furloughed, you can't just have people working and not pay them. And so that was a really confusing, challenging time. And the way we got through is, like I said, just full transparency. Another thing that Erica touched on, as a leader, you've got to be a human. And I think a lot of leaders forget that. There's tremendous pressure to be polished and have positive news and, have an answer for everything as a leader, because that's what people are looking for. But more important is to just be a human, and you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
In fact, you should, and people should see your flaws and your mistakes and understand that they can then relate to you as a human, not just a boss and an employee or the owner of the company, and I'm not the owner of the company, or whatever other dynamics exist. And that was a big part of it too. We just call employees, no agenda, and just check in. Hey, how you doing? And so those are the things to kind of not let those difficult conversations bottle up and then come to us when they're like at an impasse, but sort of nip them as it goes, day by day, week by week, checking in, having conversations without agendas. I think really helped diffuse a lot of that confusion, at least the best we could, because we were confused ourselves. So you can only diffuse the confusion so much if you're confused yourself.
Well, sure. And I mean, if you were looking for any sort of payroll protection or any sort of government assistance with whatever, every week there was some new document that was about the size of the tax code, and it's like, here, just skim this and then file these papers. And then, oh, we changed our mind. No, skim this instead. And you're going, oh, okay, this isn't even English. And that's just payroll, like rules and regulations, much less what are we going to do with this company? Where are we taking it? Who's on the team? Who's temporarily off the team? Who's allowed? Who's not allowed? And why? That's always the biggest one, right? That goes back to Erica's point about intention. Is if people don't understand your intention, and Eric, you mentioned earlier that if you don't say anything, then people are going to make up something to fill in the blank. And I don't know if either one of you are familiar with Brene Brown, who's a great thought leader she does work in shame and vulnerability, but that notwithstanding, that was one of her greatest revelations that came through her data and all the research that she's done, is that those leaders who are most effective, and whether it's in your company or in your family or wherever else, but people who are best able to work through challenges with others. A key phrase that they are able to use on a regular basis is, when they're frustrated with something, is to say, the story I'm making up in my head is, right? So it's like, I don't know what to do because I have this amount of information. And when I put those pieces together, this is what it looks like to me. So, you
Yeah.
either fill in the blanks for me and help me see what I'm really missing, and that it's not this story, it's that one. And then I can deal with this, or I can work with it, or I won't hate you for it, or I won't feel destroyed because of it.
Right.
Or else you just sort of leave me in the dark, and I'm just going to assume that whatever fiction went up here is what happened. And I think these are the same kinds of challenges we have in interpersonal relationships with friends, with family, neighbors, etc. But it's that much more critical, at least in some ways, when it's in the professional world. So that phrase of, if you don't say anything, they're going to make it up.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think all sorts of things can go awry. I mean, Eric, is that what I'm hearing you to say as well? Eric?
That
Yep.
is, wow, that's a powerful thing you just said, Laura. That is pretty powerful. Yeah. It is. It's so interesting. Right when we first went home, we knew just from hearing and chatter and, what we were hearing from even my internal partners, people were feeling really stressed and anxious. And it's exactly what you said. They didn't have all the information. So there was a very, very quick pivot to find ways to communicate on a very regular basis. So it's so funny. I every week or so, well, our CEO every week was very early on sending out these weekly videos that he was making from home, and sometimes they'd have his wife in the background. They do these funny skits, and it was the funniest thing. But in all seriousness, he always had a really inspirational and motivational message around, again, we're in this together, and sharing as much information as possible, making that information available to us, but more than anything, showcasing the organization's commitment to really taking care of us as an organization. And so as we were looking at those videos, and they continue on, another thing that we found, again, this idea of how do you navigate your stress and your anxiety as you are moving through constant change. We initiated or started having these 1-hour workshops very, very frequently around the topic of building and maintaining resilience. And part of that workshop was something that you just mentioned, Eric. I know you have probably experienced this too, but it's so important that we do share with individuals, because your tendency is to create a story. And that story often comes from sort of the way you're hardwired to process any sort of a challenge, right? So we call them thinking traps. So you might be a person like me that tends to magnetize everything. So if it is a molehill, it's going to be a mountain by the time I finish with it. That's what my anxiety will do. And so when people are again going through rapid change and they're feeling tremendous stress, they are either going to do one of two things. They tell themselves a story that's going to allow them to remain confident, resilient, something that's anchored in what is true and real. And they even start to feel like, I have a little, not control, but I can definitely begin to kind of make sense of what's happening because I have this information.
Right.
I'm focused on the facts. But when they don't, the negative self-talk and sort of the quicksand they feel themselves sort of being sucked into, it can just spiral out of control, and it can have such horrific impacts. So we're seeing it's just in the world, higher rates of stress and anxiety and burnout and even depression, as reported by, the American Psychological Association. And these are pretty intense, experiences, particularly for people who have never really dealt with anxiety or depression or some pretty uncomfortable feelings. So again, you're stressing out, you're dealing with your own personal life, you're dealing with, the demands of your job, the demands of your team, if you have one. You're stressed about managing up and taking care of, of the larger organizational goals. And all of that is like a perfect storm of a lot of stress. And so again, Eric, what you said was so powerful. If we don't give people on a regular basis the right information to make and draw the right conclusions, then they can't get back to any sort of place of balance. And even if that thing shifts next week, it's another, different inputs. The idea is, how do we equip people to have the tools to, on a very, very continual basis, make sense of the world as it is constantly evolving around them? It's not perfect, but we have to really make some effort to do that. And it's not always easy, but it's really critical. Yeah.
Yeah, not to, this is going to sound political. It's not, I promise. I think how COVID played out in the United States is just a great example of what it looks like to not communicate enough and not paint a vision for people.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely.
the reason why people are burnt out and they're ignoring the rules is because early on, no one has really told anything. Then they were told, look, just hunker down for whatever it was, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. That's what you need to do. But no one said what happens next.
Yeah.
And so 8 weeks came or whatever it was, and not much had changed. And then they wanted to still keep stuff closed. People were like, wait a minute, I was told if I did this, I would get to live my life. And now we're saying next year.
Right.
And so that confusion simply comes from not communicating, even the fact that we don't really know. But what we do know is we got to hunker down. What it looks like after, we're not sure, but we'll keep you posted. But for now, let's just focus on this. No one ever really said that. And I think people just made it up in their head. Okay, I'm going to be a free man when this is over. And that's not what it was. And then people got really frustrated and tired of hunkering down because they're like, well, it didn't get me anything. So why did I do it in the first place?
Yeah.
Right. I think we all sort of go back to our inner seventh grader where it's like, but you said if I was a good boy, if I was a good girl for 8 weeks and I did my homework and I ate my vegetables, you'd let me go to the party. Well, I ate my vegetables and I did my homework and I'm done and I want my reward. And you're going, you can't have it yet. Let's wait maybe another month or so. And you can, what? And people just really are tired of it. And often when we get tired of something, regardless of why it perpetuates, we're not always the most rational in the way we respond to it. We're looking, you want to blame somebody, you're looking for a scapegoat. And sometimes that's the easiest way to justify what you want, regardless of whether deep down you truly believe it's in your best interest or anybody else's. So I know there's definitely comes a point when I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just want to go to a movie or I just want to walk into a restaurant and not have a mask on my face. And, I mean, my nose is big enough where I wear the mask and I'm tired of having it just pushed down all over the place. Like, oh my gosh, I'm like the end of my nose is sore by the end of the day from masks pushing on my face if I have to be out for any extended period of time. It's like you're just tired of silly things, but it's just like death by 1,000 paper cuts after a while. You're going enough, not sort of one more thing. And it's silly, but those are the things that can just sort of drive you batty after a while. On top of then, of course, adding furloughs and having to navigate 3 kids who are being homeschooled and having to navigate all sorts of other stuff. So, you can only take that soda can and shake it up so much before it does explode if you don't have a good outlet for it.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I have found another thing that we've been doing, and I've been talking to lots of people around, is this idea of self-care. And it's, I know that we, again, this isn't going to stop anytime soon. And, if we can't find a way to sort of think through, how am I literally moving through my day, keeping my cool, making sure that I'm managing stress, taking care of my children. I'm getting on an airplane tonight at 8:30 to fly to Louisiana. My mom isn't feeling well, and I've got siblings there, but yeah, she'll be fine. She had some surgery and she's just kind of recuperating. And so because I'm able to work from home, I'm going to hop on a plane and go and spend some time and take care of her. But the truth is, we have tons and tons of folks around the country that are not only navigating taking care of small children, but they're taking care of elderly parents or other family members. And so it's just, again, you don't have the ability to leave your house at 8 o'clock, go to a separate place and, be your professional self there, deal only with those worries in a very sort of direct way, get on the train or your car, come home, and then turn into mommy or parent or caregiver mode. And because we're living within this sort of, it's like these blended roles, you never get a break. Like you never feel like you get a break. And so because of that, again, the stress can feel really, really uncomfortable. And I think that self-care, and I don't mean just yoga and massages, because who can go do that anyway, given the times we're living in, but you got to find another way to slow down and kind of refuel and keep yourself as balanced as you can, so that you're not kicking your cat and throwing your 17-year-old son in the closet or something crazy.
Right. But don't do either of those. Do not try this at home.
Don't do it. But yeah, it becomes even more critical. So it's just interesting that we might have thought 6 months ago that taking a 15-minute walk around the block was a luxury. And now I say, if you can't find a way to just get yourself back to a place of mental or spiritual, physical balance, you really run the risk of, not feeling as productive, making bad decisions. Relationships can start to suffer, because we just don't ever get a break from having to show up and be on all the time.
Right.
So things like PTO become really important. I don't think too many people are taking time off. Well, I can't go anywhere, so why would I use the days? Well, take the time off, shut the computer down, whatever it is, but mentally give yourself the break, and that can
Mental
really
health
help.
days.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's becoming more critical to do that as we just sort of see the stress, and those numbers around depression and burnout continue to rise. So.
Yeah. So then, Eric, what are you doing each of you, for that matter? But Griff, we'll start with you to release some of that stress. What those mental health days or any sort of release? What are some things you do for fun or just to blow off some steam now?
Yeah, well, for me personally, as an entrepreneur, unfortunately, I've had a lot of practice at having a mixed professional and personal life. Truly, as an entrepreneur, there is no work-life balance. There's just harmony. And you can try and find that harmony, but they're woven together, and you're 2 a.m, you're thinking about it. There's no, and that's healthy. That's okay. It's like having a kid, that if you're thinking about a kid 2 a.m, that's okay. It means you love the kid. I love my business. But for me, it's important to create some separation, regardless of how possible that feels at the time. So like on Friday, I'll be off the grid until Tuesday. It's important for me to take the time. I'm not turning on my phone. I'm not checking email. I'm not available, to anyone unless there's an emergency. That's important for me to take that time personally. And on top of that, I think there's just a much deeper question. You've got to figure out what brings you fulfillment. And I think a lot of people never stop to ask that very difficult question. It takes a long time to answer. Sometimes there is no clear answer, but you get close. And if you can figure that out, you can start to say no to things that don't give you fulfillment and say yes to things that do. And so where you spend your free time does re-energize you, not just shut your brain off, because shutting your brain off is different than re-energizing you. So personally, I like to run. I like to help not-for-profits. I have a lot of entrepreneurial experience, and a lot of not-for-profits have difficulty thinking entrepreneurially. They're not run like a business often. They're run like someone has a really big passion for a mission, but to really execute that, you've got to have different specific knowledges and skills. And a lot of times, I can bring for-profit thinking into not-for-profits and help them get unstuck. So I enjoy doing that. So I sit on a couple of not-for-profit boards where I do that, and those things are fun for me. They give me energy, even though I'm spending a lot of energy doing them. And so that's how I make sure that no matter how busy my business is, no matter how much I think my business is, going down the toilet, it doesn't matter, because if I don't do those things, I can't be an effective leader of my business. It's a domino effect. So taking that pause, whether it's forced or chosen, oftentimes unleashes a lot more potential than if you never take that break to begin with.
Yeah. So out of curiosity now, I've got my wheels turning. Since you only gave me a little bit of information, my head is making up all sorts of stories. You're going off the grid from Friday until Tuesday. Where are you going?
Well, I wish I could tell you, but I am going so I'm in a group called Entrepreneurs Organizations, a bunch of entrepreneurs, and not-for-profit. I'm in a forum. We meet once a month, the same 6 entrepreneurs. We get together. We talk about mostly personal stuff, to be honest, because as a leader, when you're stuck personally, your whole business gets stuck, because when you're at the top, if you're going through something, everybody can feel it. And so we end up talking about a lot of personal stuff, even though it's a business group. But anyway, I'm planning the retreat, and it's a complete surprise. They have no idea where they're going, so I can't tell you guys, because then they'll figure it out. But I told them, meet me at this parking lot. Your car's going to stay there till Monday. And don't worry, you'll see me when you see me, and I'll take you where we're going. Just tell your family you'll be back Monday. So
and make sure they have an extra pair of keys to the car. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good for you.
Hopefully your car's there. So yeah, it should be fun. Good opportunity for me to plan, little retreats, fun exercise for me, and spend some time with them who I care so much about. All of us are going through such difficult times right now. It's great that we can be there for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important, when you, as they say, it's lonely at the top, you don't necessarily have the core group, certainly not within the organization itself, that you can really share openly with and be as vulnerable, as transparent on as many issues as you'd like to. So if you can find that core network outside of people who get it, who are there with you, and where you can share best practices, vent, empathize with each other at a different level, I think that's incredibly healthy. And I would really encourage everybody out there to do that. I've had a number of clients over the years who were new into the C-level from whatever organizations they were. Sometimes they were particularly young or the only female, or just new to that level of role, and thinking, now what do I do? Who do I talk to? There's nobody I can really connect with here. Nobody gets it. And often, especially if you're not somebody who's a natural networker, I'm a natural networker. I'm a natural connector, and I just love meeting new people. So I find my core group that I can talk to about any subject with. I always know someone I can turn to. But I think for a lot of people I've always been sort of nose down, just doing your work, and you do your job and you get your promotions and you do whatever else. And then suddenly you're in a place where I'm going, who do I talk to? So for me, I've been very glad to be able to introduce some clients to, CFO networking groups or young professional, young presidents groups, those kinds of things, and saying, did you know that there's organizations like this? Let me introduce you to another client who is part of an organization that works, for this purpose, et cetera. And, you can talk to them about membership, and to be able to make those connections for others. I think that's, if you're not somebody who is a natural networker and you're getting to that point of greater and greater loneliness as you get to the top, start now. Go to your LinkedIn, or heck, reach out to me. And I'm sure either one of you probably knows a zillion people in different types of roles who would be able to say, here's 3 people you should contact. Here are 3 organizations you need to Google and find out about, because there are so many other people out there who share your struggles. You are not alone. No matter how unique you think your situation is, there's an organization for it. So go find someone who gets it and open yourself up to that conversation. I think it's essential to emotional and mental health, and then to job performance and family performance, for that matter, to be able to have that group where, you can go and talk to your other 5 entrepreneurs who are part of that circle, and just know that you've been totally data dumped everything. You got the feedback you need. You can go back, be a better husband, be a better father, be a better boss, be a better everything else, because you had the space to get it out. I mean, am I just rambling here, or does it sound pretty accurate to you?
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, and the other thing is, you have, if you have a spouse, significant other, you have your parents, you have your best friends, you have your partners in your business, but they know certain slivers of you, and they're in those slivers, like they're in it, right, and you're in it. And so the beauty about having an outside group or a mentor who you talk to once a month is that they're not in it, and they can see things that you just can't see when you're in it. And so for me, I have mentors and I have this group, and they help me see those blind spots. But like you said, Laura, I think it's important for everybody. You don't have to be at the top of a company to have mentors or people that are not in your life or know you so well that they can help you see things that you can't see when you're in the middle of it.
Right. So, Erica, are you part of those kinds of groups as well?
I am, and I definitely appreciate them so much. But before I go into my comment, I'm so fascinated by Eric and what he said. Eric, did you say that this group, and it's okay, we're not mad that you won't tell us where you're going, but we do want to know later. My question, though, is, did you say that this was an all-male group, or is it just all entrepreneurs? Is it all men?
No, just entrepreneurs.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
It's you have to be an owner. You have to have 51% or more equity.
Okay.
Because there's other groups where you don't need that, but the thing is, like, there's this emotional thing going on when you birth the company and are still running it, that it's hard to connect and relate to other people that don't have that emotional attachment. So this group is exclusively for people that have founded and are still running their company, but it's not gender or race or anything specific.
Got it. Yeah, the reason I asked that question, and because I was so curious, this whole notion of self-care and being vulnerable, and as you said, sort of having an opportunity to open up and to talk and to share. It's not something that's easy to do, I think, for leaders in general, just because they're busy, or sometimes, you model sort of being the person that's taking care of everyone else. And so often you don't stop and slow down and take care of yourself and really kind of find that support to say, you know what, I'm struggling, or I'm scared, or I don't know. And I just need someone to literally be here for me. And so I think that's amazing that you guys have, and girls have carved out the time to do that. But I think it's especially important. In a self-care workshop that I like to do at Independence, I'd make it a point to say that self-care isn't an indulgence, and that it's not just, you Google it, you see the women in the spa, with the robes and the fluffy towels, and that's wonderful. I mean, I think that's amazing, but you don't always see sort of self-care for men. You don't see men a lot unless they're with a wife or a partner, in those ads. But it's so important that whatever you do, that we are engaging in some activity that just allows us to slow down and get back in touch with who we are. And so lately I made a bit of an investment in myself. I've been working out with a trainer, and that's been great. I've been working out with her 3 to 4 mornings a week. And I tell you, I'm almost a little afraid when I pull up because, she's tough. But just getting back in touch sort of with my physicality has just bolstered my confidence in a different kind of way. I've always known myself to be relatively healthy and strong, but as I'm getting older, I'm just physically feeling a little isolated, sometimes struggling with a little sadness. And again, very transparent. As a coach, I tell people, everybody, I don't care how successful you may look or how great this week is, you have off weeks, you have off days. And for me,
Right.
The idea of sort of challenging myself physically, it kind of puts me in a place where if there's a challenge that comes up at work, I can kind of mentally go inside and say, you got this, because my body feels strong. And that may not be the method of self-care for everyone, so for some of us, it's having a gratitude practice, or, you may find that meditation and prayer is the thing that kind of keeps you anchored and centered. But whatever it is, I just think that everyone needs to have a moment or two throughout the day where you can slow down and say, this is what it is. I'm feeling myself spin. What can I do to just get back to balance? And again, it's not indulgence, but it's really easy to feel guilty about taking the time when you feel that maybe people around you have situations that are more challenging, or you just have so much on your plate that you feel that it's a selfish thing. You feel maybe a little guilty when you carve out time, and it takes you away from maybe your children that have been wanting to play with you all day, right? They've been in front of the TV all day, and you're thinking, should I really take 15 minutes or 20 minutes and go for that run or read my book and then get back to my kids? The answer is probably yes, but it's still very difficult to prioritize yourself when, during these times. So that's a bit about what I do, but I'm an advocate for it, because without it, what did I say the last time we talked, Laura? You can't pour from an empty cup. You just
And you know what? I'll reinforce it the same way I did last time, which is that, and this is Eric, how Erica and I knew that it was a moment from the universe, and reinforcing it to all. So I have my blue water bottle here, and this is a souvenir from the Pennsylvania Conference for Women. And she mentioned that comment about, you have to take care of yourself and whatnot. And the quote that's on this, if you can all see it out there, says, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. So there you go. It's meant to be. And I can also relate to the trainer and child sort of balance, because mine is one and the same. I have a very unforgiving, unrelenting trainer who wakes me up somewhere in the 6:30 range every day. He's 4 years old, and he comes into my room and immediately, like, when I'm still sleeping, will take my face in his hands and say, "Mommy, should we go for a walk?" That's his wake up call. That's my little alarm clock. No snooze button whatsoever. And he will sit there and say it until I get up. And now when he says, "Mommy, shall we go for a walk?" that is the euphemism for, "Mommy, get me a sippy cup of milk and a peanut butter sandwich, put me in the stroller while I yell at you for an hour to run faster. And I don't care how steep the hill is, but I'm just going to sit there. And if you slow down for the uphills, I'm going to make you sorry." So
I love it.
He's quite unrelenting about it, but at least I get my exercise in, like it or not. So there is no excuse to be happy. If it rains, it's kind of a little bit of a reprieve, but otherwise, at least I get my exercise. So no complaints there. Eric, any particular exercise routine that you like?
Yeah, I'm a runner. I really enjoy it. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean.
Yeah, no,
was that
you,
for
Eric. I need to call
Oh.
you. I gotta start calling you Griff. It's too late.
Eric
I know
and
you
Eric.
prefer
Yeah, call me
your
Griff.
nickname. Okay, so for the last
Call
3
me
minutes
Griff.
or so, Griff, how about you?
I'm a runner, and I started running because I hated running, and I always told myself I hated running my whole life. Hate running.
Me too.
And then I woke up one day. I was like, you know why you hate running? Because you tell yourself you hate running. So I made it a challenge. I'll just keep running until I don't hate running. And now now I can't not run. Like I just absolutely love to run. It's my meditation.
Yeah.
I stop a run and I write down all these ideas I had that I never would have had I not gone for that long run. So that's kind of my main mode. I ride the bike a little bit, but my main mode of exercise is right now. I used to play sports, can't do that for the moment. So now it's just all running.
Sure. And I've realized that there's a very important grammatical distinction that I got clear on from running. And that is that I don't like running, but I love having run. That's really critical. See, I'm a linguist. This is how my brain works, right? So I know, like I'm sitting there when he's going, Mommy, should we go for a walk? And I'm going, no, I don't want to. No, I really don't want to. And I'm getting dressed because I can't really see straight. My eyes haven't started focusing yet. I'm getting him straight. I'm getting myself straight, get my app. So it'll at least track my GPS and how far I went, etc. But if I don't do it, I will be mad at myself for the rest of the day and sit there regretting it, going, I should have run. I just should have gone. I don't know why I told him to go use the tablet for an extra half hour and let me sleep a little bit longer because, when you're done sleeping that extra half hour, you don't remember doing it anyway. You just know that you didn't run. So, I don't like running, but I love having run. So I just got to remind myself how I'm going to feel for the rest of the day once that time comes that I should have been returning from that run.
Yeah. It's just so interesting how you can feel, you can relate to your body and your own belief in yourself, your own ability to sort of overcome and to stay resilient when you are anchored in something physical. And I tell people, I'm not going to run. I used to run in college. I'm not doing it now. I have some knee issues in my life right now. And I don't necessarily like working out. I really don't. I've probably joined 1,000 gyms and went 2 or 3 times and spent money on them for a year and never used them. But whatever it is we do, whether that's dancing, whether that's riding your bike, whether that's taking a hike, I just think there is something about the feeling you get when you're like, oh, I did that. I pushed myself and I did that. So that's something you have some control over. So I think a lot of folks are dialing up their physicality because as we live in this crazy world where we don't have a lot of control, when you can get yourself focused on things that you literally can control, it's a huge confidence booster, whether it's running, whether it's saying, I'm going to meditate every day for 5 days, or whatever the thing is, anything you can do where you feel like you are able to utilize your body. It's such an amazing confidence booster. At least that's what I think. So, yeah.
I don't know about you, but
oh, sorry, Laura.
No, go on.
I think what's also important in today's day with everything is connected. There's this you get to see what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And specifically with working out, in groups like Peloton that are, these communities. While that can be really motivating, it can also be incredibly demotivating because you feel like, well, that guy just did this and I'm down here. So I might as well not even try.
Exactly.
And it's important to not compare yourself to what other people are doing because there's always going to be someone better than you. I don't care who you are. There's someone better than you. And unless you're the kind of person where that's the fire you need in your belly, then sure, go for that. But most people, they look at that and it makes them want to give up or makes them feel inadequate or makes them feel like they're not doing enough. And it's a negative impact. And so I just think you should compare yourself to yourself. What do you want to do? And did you do that? That's all that really matters.
That's it. I could not agree more. I think there's so many different ways to take care of yourself. Again, I'm never going to be a runner. I'm not. And I think you're right. I think that what's happening, we look at social media, it's so easy to compare yourself, but it's such not a good thing to do. It just isn't. So.
Right. And I'm also not good personally. I love the idea of I'm going to do 5 days a week, every week I'm going to do X. I'm so not a routine person. The minute I say I'm going to start this routine, I automatically don't want to do it because I just
Right.
don't like the concept. The only reason I'm as consistent as I am with the morning runs is because my little rooster doesn't have a snooze button and he's going to sit there and harass me until I get
Yeah.
up and go do
There
it
you go.
anyway. But so
Yeah.
he's my routine.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I have to just say today, I'm going to do
Today.
this
That's
right
exactly
now.
right.
And if I do it, great, check for me.
Yeah.
I'll worry about tomorrow.
Laura, do you know that for me, I think that the real beauty of self-care is that it's a compassion practice.
Yeah.
You know, you're just simply saying, I care about myself so much and I love my family so much, or my team. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to be gentle with myself. I'm going to do whatever works for me right now. Right. So there's no need to have some grandiose plan around it. It's just slowing down and having some compassion and just being gentle with yourself and saying, right
Yeah.
now I'm hurting, I'm stressed, or whatever the thing is, and I'm simply going to take some time for me. And then from there, and we even model that. I mean, Eric, imagine the model that, or the role model you are for other really bright leaders in your organization. You are showing them by taking time off to say, you can't give to anything, this organization or your team, unless you take care of yourself. But you as a leader are actually modeling that. And I think that's such a gift. I really do.
It's important to live, whatever it is that you want other people to hear from you. If you're not doing it, you might as well
Yeah.
not say it.
Exactly.
And I think too many leaders kind of set a culture. They write a bunch of words on a poster, it's in all the rooms, and then they live the exact opposite, and everybody sees through that, and it just kind of invalidates the whole thing. And it's really important that you just say what it is and you live it. And if people aren't on board with that, that's okay. It just means you need different people that are on board with it. But you've got to be something and be consistent, and you got to be heading somewhere else. You're not going to get the right people on the bus.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we are just about at the end of the hour, and I have loved this conversation. I want to thank both of you so much for joining me today and just having this discussion. Each of us, can you give everybody out there a sense of where they can go to learn more about you and your organizations?
We're at ibx.com, and I'm on both Facebook and LinkedIn. So I'd be happy to chat with anybody, answer any questions. But Laura, it's been just a pleasure. And Eric, it was so nice to meet you. So thank you both.
Yeah, nice meeting you, Erica. Laura, thanks for having me. You can find me on LinkedIn, of course. My personal website's emailgriff.com. So I like to help out if anyone's got entrepreneurial ideas or not-for-profit and you could use perspective. I like to do that. It's not like a cost or anything. It's not a service I sell. Like I said, it gives me fulfillment. So if anyone does want that, happy to offer that.
Any final words of wisdom or parting thoughts?
I'll say what I said the last time, just carve out time for self-care without a doubt. And I think it's also really important to just know that it's okay to feel a little off balance sometimes. It's okay. We're living through some pretty interesting times, but you can navigate it better when you sort of use, or if you tap into your village, you tap into your community. You don't have to do any of this by yourself. So
thank you. Griff?
Yeah, Laura, you said something, your routine, and then Erica said, everybody's different. I, for the longest time, had a goal to do yoga 3 times a week, and I never did it. I signed up for the thing when I could watch it on Apple TV. I never did it. And then I finally realized I just don't want to do it. I just picked the wrong thing. It's not for me. I don't really. And so just listen to your actions. If you keep saying you're going to do something and you never do it, I'll just cut to the chase for you. You don't want to do it. You just think you do. So do the thing. It's okay. Just keep finding other things until there's something you do, and then you do it again. You're like, okay, obviously I like this because I'm doing it. People do what they like doing naturally. You just find that path of least resistance. So go with that. Listen to that.
Oh, wow.
Yes. If only we could do that with all aspects of life, only do the things we want to do. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have to bend from that a bit, but especially with regard to those non-essentials, we know we need to do something like exercise to be physically healthy, but we don't have to do yoga. We don't have to run. We don't have to do those things. So yes, listen to your body, listen to your actions, pay attention. You're There's no reason to deny the reality that you're creating one way or another. So go with it rather than against the grain, I think is great advice. And with that, everybody else, of course, please remember to tune in to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite, which is the podcast where you'll find Erica's episode from a couple of weeks ago and Eric's episodes back from episode 5 and 6. And we've got some really great guests coming up, aside from, of course, everybody else who has also been amazing storytellers and advice givers and leaders and role models in all the episodes so far. So check those out. Subscribe. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating because, that's all what we really deserve, all of us. Feel free to reference the individual guests themselves in the comments if you'd like to give a review as well. Just spread the word because we really want to have the opportunity to give as many people more confidence, greater presence, more influence, and overall more success in their work and beyond. So with that, I thank you all for joining me today, and I look forward to any feedback that you'd like to give to me, and I'm sure to Eric and Erica as well. And I wish you all a very successful